Hello everyone, this is Ben from the Academy of Gaming Film and Animation, and what we're looking at today is how we're going to be able to create animations with our skeletal mesh here from the Unreal Engine. So this is the mannequin that we see in our third person template, and what we're going to be looking at today is how we can create some simple sort of idle animations that will allow us to be able to create some more life in our scene and everything. So in the first semester in Agfa Engage, what we're looking at is how we could create environments using asset packs and a few models to be able to create a scene. And what we're going to be looking at now is how we can actually breathe life into those environments by having characters with animations just playing in the background there. So you've probably played games where you've seen this sort of thing happening. We have seen skeletal meshes just sort of walking around the place, just sort of doing these small sort of idle loop animations, and it just sort of helps to make the environment you're in feel like an actual place and feel like there's actually people there doing things. So they're kind of like extras in the background of your story and everything. So it's a really exciting thing. I think it's a really important part of creating environments in games. And we're not going to be going, into things like walk cycles or attack animations or things like that that are a bit more complicated. We're going to build up your confidence first by starting with some of these smaller ones. But you can actually do quite a fair bit with this, and if you go onto the Unreal Epic Marketplace, you'll see there's any number of animation packs which range in their price range and everything. But they all offer this, where it's just NPCs in the background just doing these animations. So if you get good at this, and this is actually something that you can do and help out a lot of other people as well. So anyway, what I want to look at is first of all just going a little bit more in depth into this kind of a rig and how to use it, how to create an animation, and then we'll go into how we can bring that animation into Unreal and have it so that your character does something. If we press a button or something, they can play that animation, or more importantly, when they walk up to someone else like an NPC, they also perform that same sort of action and things like that. So that's all we're going to be looking at today. Hopefully we get time for that, but if all we walk away from is feeling a little bit more confident about how to use these mannequins and animations, then I'll be really happy. So first of all, big difference between this and regular sort of animation is that we're using these handles. So these are what's known as IK handles, or inverse kinematics. What that means is that when I move one part of it, the bone that it's attached to will rotate in one direction, and the other bone that's a little bit further along, like this upper sort of bicep bone here and everything, that will move in the opposite sort of direction. So it creates that illusion of like an elbow. And you can see the same thing happening down here with the foot and with the hips. So you'll notice that I'm not moving the bones, I'm actually clicking on these handles, these red sort of markers here, and moving them. If I've moved them and they've sort of gone out of place a bit, and I just want to get it back to its original position, all I have to do is right click and hold and go up here to stance position. Alternatively, I can click on this little one here, and if I have the bone selected there, that will also then take it back to its stance position. Okay, so what we're going to do is, the animation I just demonstrated there, I'm just going to walk you through it, and that's going to be making a salute animation. And from that, we'll be able to talk about what some of these other control here do, and how we can use them to sort of create this animation. So first of all, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to change it from 30 frames per second down to 60, because that'll look a little bit smoother and better in the game engine. And so now I'm just going to start by just moving the feet together. So it's going to start with this sort of shoulders apart and everything. I'm actually going to move the hands into position first. So make sure that they look natural, but also formal. So that's down and to there. And we're just going to keyframe those in. So to keyframe them, just press S on the keyboard and that will keyframe them in. And same with this one here. So every bone has its own animation track, so we've got to make sure that we put those in. So that's there. I'm also going to make sure things loop. So I'm going to actually do the whole animation at 60 frames, so that's 1 second. They'll salute, and then if I change this to 120, at 120 they'll go back to their rest position. So I'm actually going to press S here as well. Or I could actually go over here, go copy, and then go to the end of my animation here and go paste. So yeah, that's how we'll do that. So now I'm also going to move the feet into position as well. So keyframe there. I'm actually going to leave these back ones here because that can sometimes make things a little bit difficult. So I'm just going to start with the starting animations and then move them into position. So again, the other thing we've got to consider when making animations for a game, we don't want our character to move. So even though our character might be moving to the side a little bit and then, you know, lifting up this foot here and then moving it aside and then planting it down and then doing all that, we don't want to do that because otherwise the character will move from their center point. So what we do instead is we just move them on the spot. So we're going to move this down towards the center to straighten them up, and then we're going to move the other leg in, and then we're going to lift it up on the spot. So I'm going to move this over to 60 and say, yep, we want that here. Going to just rotate that a bit and everything. I'm going to press spacebar, in fact, just to get this dead straight. Like so, and then S. And then same with this one here as well. I'm going to move it over, move it in, move it up, there, move it down, rotate it down, like so, and then S. Cool. And so it's moving them together. Yep, so that's all good so far. But now I want to, it like kind of looks a little bit weird if they're just sort of sliding their feet in. So at this sort of 30 point here, I'm actually going to lift up one of these legs. I'm going to lift up this one here, and then press S. So now it's going to look like, yep, they're actually lifting up their foot and planting it down into a salute position. And I might even just put a little bit of rotation on the hips there, just to sell this whole idea of the character actually moving across. So I'm going to press S here, and then go up to 60, straighten it up again, but at 30 I'm actually going to rotate the hip slightly that way. Yep, and just to compensate so it doesn't look like they're leaning over this way, I am going to do the same here. Start a keyframe here. We're always going to have a start keyframe, otherwise it doesn't quite work. So then there, press S, so then it gets to the 60 point here. I'm actually going to go stance pose and then press S. So it's just going to have a little bit of a shuffle there with the hips and shoulders, just to sort of give the impression of the character keeping balance there. And now we can start working with the hand. So I'm going to press S here, and then at 60 we want the hand to be up and in the saluting position. So I'm going to move it out here, move it there, move it up, and what we want to do now is just rotate this one around. So I might want to get into the position here, move it up like so. Again, I'm not going to get particular about what type of salute, as long as it's not offensive or anything, that should be fine. So there it is. Cool. 6. But as you'll notice, this kind of does this. Now you might want them just to do that, and if you do that, I'm quite happy with that. But you might want to say bring the hand in, like so. In that case, we'll just go to this 30 point here, bring that in, and then S. That just makes it a little bit more formal and everything. So it's up to you. Again, this is all your own animation. It's your own personal taste and everything. And then again, when it comes down here, you know, that's just the sort of salute falling down there and everything. We want to probably hold it for a couple of seconds. So I'm just going to copy this frame here and then move it across and then press paste. So that holds it into position, and then you can either go down like that, or you might decide, no, I'm actually going to sort of put a bit of a snap to this and everything. And then S, so it sort of goes out that way. That looks like it's a little bit, we don't want to go down that way, we want to sort of come out. Yep. So actually want that to come down a bit. Like that. Yep. Yep, cool. Excellent. Yep. So that's just there. Cool, so we have our own sort of salute here. So it sort of goes in a for loop. Except the feet don't come back out, and I want them to come back out. So I'm going to go back here, I'm going to go copy, and then go out to here, and press paste. Go to here as well, same thing, copy, down here, paste, and so now we know that it all loops. So, yep, now we've just got to put in that extra sort of leg lift here so that it does the same thing. So here, yep, also just going to copy that, and because the arm doesn't come down, so we're not going to move it until the arm starts coming down. So we're just going to go paste there, same thing here, just going to copy and paste. Yep, and then we're going to lift up that leg going out again. Like so. And we just want to get that hip movement in there again, just like we did before. Now going in the opposite direction. And now here. So we'll put that at 100. And then that one, rotate around. So it keeps the character straight. Yep. And we also want to copy this one here just so they don't start leaning before they need to. And then S. Yep. Cool. Excellent. So what does that look like now? Yep. Cool. Excellent. So we have our looping animation there. So now that we've got this, let's talk about how do we get this out of here and into Unreal. So this at the moment is a Maya file. We need to export this out as an FBX. So we're just going to highlight all this, and we're going to go here, and we're going to go down to export selection, and we're going to make sure we have FBX export selected. Go to animation, go down here, 120, that's good, and yeah, we will now just give it a name. So we'll just call it Salute Anim Export, like that. Cool. You may get an error message, don't worry about it though, it's just saying that it's complex animation, and it's normally just going to warn you about that. If that doesn't show up, what you need to do is go to Preferences, sorry not Preferences, Plugins, and search in that plugin box when it comes up for FBX, and that will allow you to do that. Sorry, it's just over here. So FBX, these two here, FBX Maya and Game for FBX Exporter, should both be checked. Okay, so what you will end up with if you go into the Maya folder, there should be inside the Scenes folder, there will be a FBX file. Now we've got a program installed on here, which is basically used to be able to see these sorts of files and everything. So it's called FBX Review. So if you search for that and click on it, you should see this sort of program come up. We can then left click and drag and drop this in here. And that's just because the 3D object one, the one here that it wants you to use, which is default inside of Windows, isn't very good at being able to see animations that are done with a skeleton. It'll probably just show you a picture of a bee. So that's why we use this free program that Autodesk released called FBX Review. It's really useful. I highly recommend getting it because yeah, it's very useful, especially once you start getting to character animations. So we've got that. So now let's talk about, okay, how do we get this inside of the Unreal Engine? So this is a third person one that I have already set up before, and as you could see before, when I pressed play on here and then pressed F, character would salute, Let's just stay on the spot, and you press F again, and then your character could start walking. Okay, so again, like I said, we're not going to be looking at walking or walk cycles or anything else like that. That's a little bit more complicated, but we are just going to look at, okay, how can we introduce this animation into that cycle? So if we go to my third person character here, you'll see just a bit of a preview of what we're going to do. You press F, if you press it once, so A, it sets the max walk speed to 0, so your character can't move, and then it just plays the animation. And because this is made with the same skeleton, I can just play this salute start animation, put a delay on it, and then go to the salute hold animation, and then if I press it again, it plays the animation of salute finish. There's a short delay to allow that animation to finish, and then I can start moving around again, so it sets my max walk speed back to 150, and then it goes back to its animation blueprint, which is the idle walk and run animation. So seems a bit complicated, but trust me, once we get started on this, it'll all be fine. Okay, but let's first talk about getting those animations into here from Maya. So here we've got this one. I'm just going to start a new one. It's going to be called Salute 2, and just in here we're going to drag and drop that FBX image one in. So when we drag it in, it's going to ask us, do you want to import the skeletal mesh? We're actually going to say no, because we're actually going to use import mesh is the one we're going to uncheck. We're actually going to use the existing third person skeleton here. So I've got a number of different ones here. I've got one with the animation starter pack, but we're actually going to go with this one, which is just the character mesh. And yep, we're going to go export a time, yep, and go import. And what we should see now is this down here. And if I open that up, we can see, yep, there it is, playing just nicely. First of all, I'm just going to show you how you can actually just have it in, and you press a button and this animation plays, and then we'll talk about, okay, how do we implement this a little bit better. But the thing is that now, if all you want to do is create those scenes like the ones that we saw at the start of this video, all you have to do is drag and drop that character in there, and that will actually play on loop like that. So if ever you wanted to populate your level with like interesting NPCs just doing stuff in the background just to make it look a little bit more realistic, that's all you have to do, which is really cool, because it means we can start populating our scene with all kinds of interesting characters doing interesting things. But we're going to go one step further. We're going to look at, okay, how can we get this character to do that salute when we press a button? So now that we've got that one there, we know its name, Salute Anim. We're going to go back to our third person here, and I'm just going to borrow this F key again. In fact, no, I'll leave that for that one there. I'm just going to use a completely different key. So you will not have all of this other stuff down the bottom here. I'm just going to move that out the way. You'll probably have something that looks a little bit more like this. So I'm just going to do it in here. So I'm going to say G key, and should see these little icons here that look like little sort of keyboards and everything. Click that, and that will give us this sort of pressed released sort of key here. So I'm just going to do the simplest example of this, and then we'll make it more complicated. So I'm going to go here, go play animation mesh. So that's this skeletal mesh here. So we need to make sure that's where it's pointing to, because that is the skeletal mesh that is waiting for those animations. So we're going to go back here to Event Graph, and then we can just pick that animation. So if I type in there salute, I can actually see that salute anim right there. So press G when I'm playing this game, and there you have it. Goes through the whole animation. But as you can see now, my character is ice skating around, which is fine, but it's not really what we're going for. So what do we do afterwards? Well, we've got to just go have it return back to its animation default mode, because if you go here, you'll see this character's got this idle animation going on. Again, we won't go into this because this is where things get a little bit more complicated. We can see here animation mode. It says here use animation blueprint. Basically there's a whole blueprint that goes through deciding what animation this character is going to play, whether it's an idle, or if they start moving at a certain speed, they'll start walking and then running and then jumping and all these other things. A little bit more complicated than what we want to do in a beginner's class. All we need to know is that we want this to go back to that animation blueprint once it's finished doing our custom animation. So once we've finished playing the animation here, we want it to go set animation mode for mesh, and we're just going to say use animation blueprint. Now, Problem is, if we do this, it's going to go straight back to that before it's even played this animation here. So we're actually going to put in a delay here that'll stop that from happening. So I'm just going to put this as a delay of 1, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if we need to make it a little bit longer. So press play now, press G. Yep, see how he snaps back to that idle animation? He doesn't do that end animation that we just made before. We don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here and we're going to say, okay, let's maybe make this 2 seconds. So I'm going to press G. Yep, that's pretty good. Again, we're not going for perfect, but you'll notice here I can still do this weird sort of ice skating thing when I'm saluting. So what do we do to fix that? Well, a really easy way of doing that is we're just going to set the walk speed to be 0 during this animation, and that'll stop. That'll mean you'll still be able to look around, but you won't be able to basically walk around. So when it's playing this animation, we're going to say set max walk speed, and you'll see it doesn't really come up. It's because it hasn't really got anything. It should be looking at the character movement for that, but we haven't got that selected in yet. So coming off the animation, it's looking for that and doesn't really know what that is. So it's asking for a target. We're going to pull this down here and plug that into there. And we're going to set max walk speed to 0. And then after that delay, after we've set this back to here, I'm going to set this max walk speed back to 150. Cool. So that is it. So now, when I'm in here, I press play, go G, can look around, but then I can only walk around once I've finished that animation there. So that's just a really simple way of bringing that into this environment here. We'll just quickly go through now, okay, how do I get it so that other NPCs react to me when I walk up? We won't go through that whole how to get a widget coming up. That's again a little bit more advanced and everything. That's something we'll look at a little bit later once people are a little bit more confident about getting these animations in the first place. So what we're going to do now is just have it so that when you walk up to an NPC, they do that. So we're going to copy this character here. So go to third person blueprints. Going to see there's one here. Again, like I said, I've already made one before. I'm just going to make another one. So we'll go right click, go here, duplicate, and we're going to call this one saluting sergeant, because we've already got an officer. So we'll double click here. Again, we've already got some other stuff in here. So I'm just going to get rid of this. And I'm even going to get rid of the camera follow because we don't really need that. And basically we're going to have it so that when the character comes near this character, they'll salute. So I'm going to put in a box collision. It's going to detect that character. I'm going to make that pretty large so that, sorry, I meant to just resize that and ended up renaming it R. So box collision. Cool. So now I'm just going to go over here, stretch this out a bit, and a bit like this as well. Compile, and then we're going to go here. So with that selected, I'm going to come down here. Yours might be over here, don't stress if it is. It's the same thing, it's basically just the details panel here that we're looking at. And I'm going to go here and select this on component begin overlap. Press play. Bring this over here. Bring it over here just to keep things a little bit neat. And yeah, so basically it's going to begin overlap. So basically we want it so that when the third person character collides with this overlap, play salute. So instead of pressing G to do it, this collision is going to do it instead. So I'm going to go over here, go cast to third person character, go other actor and plug that in like we always do, and then just in here, simple play animation for mesh. Select animation, salute, anim, there it is, and that should really be it. Yeah, because that should work. So now when we drag and drop this character in, it's going to play this animation and go through that. As we did before, we're just going to put in a delay of 2 seconds, and after that delay is finished, we're going to set animation mode for the mesh back to animation blueprint. And that's just in case we want to later put in a walk cycle for this animation, but it's also good because it will go back to the idle animation, so they won't just be standing there stuck in stone in their final frame of that animation, which is always important. So, we've got that. Saluting Sergeant, we'll put them in there. Let's just rotate them around a little bit like that, and then press play. Then when my character walks up, there it goes, and then it goes back to his idle. And if I click in it again, same thing. So again, this is just a very short demonstration of how to create those animations, export them out of Maya, bring them into Unreal, and then have them on your character, and then have them on an NPC. From here, the world's your oyster. You can really put in any kind of animation. My advice is, rather than getting too ambitious and start going into, oh, I want to set up a melee combat, or oh, I want to have the character shaking hands and stuff like that. Let's start small and take a look at some of those other animation examples that I put there that are already on the asset store in Unreal, and think about, okay, what sort of animations could I maybe bring into my environment? If you're here from semester 1 and if you've already got that village pack environment, think about what are some animations that villagers would do inside of that village. How can I make this look more real? Okay. But yeah, thank you for joining us, and next time we might look at a little bit more of the sort of more advanced stuff, like some of this widget stuff here and everything, so we can sort of have, you know, dialogue trees and things like that. But just for now, I think that the main thing is just getting comfortable with having our characters having animations in there. If we can do that, then we're quite happy. So have fun.